morning. How's everybody doing? I think they put me on first because I don't really have an inside voice, so prepare yourselves. So I'm very excited to be here. I will try to talk into the mic and not, let me set this down, overwhelm you. So the ceiling can't hold us. This is a talk that I wrote, and I'm super psyched to give it. So I often will be driving down the 101 or the 280 and listen to some jams, and Macklemore has a song, Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, called, I actually can't even remember. I always think of it as like, the ceiling can't hold us, don't keep us back. And there's this line in the song that says, you know, we can't go back, this is the moment, tonight is the night, we'll fight till it's over. We'll put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. So imagine you're like in this packed party and things are going crazy and this is like the moment of your life and you're like living in this moment and you put your hands up because the ceiling's gonna fall. And every time I think about this line, what I think about is, but we should put our hands down because we want the ceiling to fall. Like we want to break through, like us together can push through. And so that's why I've called this talk, The Ceiling Can't Hold Us. So I've done a lot of various things since arriving in the Valley about, 6, 7 years ago. I can't even remember. So I did go to school for CS. I studied distributed systems in grad school. And the only reason that I'm telling you these things is because I think it will help provide color and context to the talk I'm about to give. So I spent several years at IBM Research. I wrote a lot of papers, built a lot of proof of concept systems, and then I went to a startup where I was the first female executive they hired, and I ran product at that startup for a while. I then co-founded a company, went through 500 startups, and now I run the engineering team at Tindy. And so I've been in the position of doing a lot of hiring and also doing a lot of interviewing and trying to be hired as a woman in tech. And so I want to provide you with some ideas and some of those experiences of where I think we go wrong and some of the trends where I think that women make a lot of mistakes, not on purpose, but just in not knowing. So the talk wouldn't be the same without another Macklemore quote, and this is something I really firmly believe. Make the money, don't let the money make you. Change the game, don't let the game change you. So we're all playing a game now in Silicon Valley. We're starting companies, we're going to big companies, we're getting hired, we're coming to events like this to do networking. And the reason that there aren't very many women in technology and even fewer C-level female executives at technology companies is because we're playing a game where the rules are fundamentally broken. And we don't really know what we're doing, so we just kind of fall back on, how should I hire somebody? Well, how did somebody hire me? And we just keep perpetuating these ideas and these thoughts over and over again. And so if we really want to do something different, we need to throw out everything that we know about how to play the game. And so the purpose of this talk is to take everything you know and to turn it upside down. So Silicon Valley is all about disruption, right? Like I open up TechCrunch and all I read is like, somebody's disrupting payments, somebody's disrupting recruiting. And let me tell you, there are very few people who are actually doing anything truly disruptive. And so if we're going to go further in technology, we do need to be disruptive. So here are some of my ideas about how you can disrupt your own internal thinking about being a female technologist. So when you now, okay, I wasn't actually expecting that response. They always say when you write a talk, you'll never know where people laugh. And so I didn't think I would listen to that response. So there may be recruiters in the audience today. And there probably are. And recruiters are not fundamentally bad individuals by any stretch of the imagination. Take a drink now. You don't know what's in here. When you start a company, they often tell you that the investors are not your friends. They're motivated by money. So what I have noticed in working with a lot of women earlier in their career and women who are newer to tech is that they don't understand how recruiters operate. So if you're thinking about working at a startup and they've hired an external recruiter, the way that recruiter makes money is they get a percentage of the salary if you're hired. So recruiters are fundamentally motivated by money. Now, in-house recruiters, that might be a different situation, but very few startups, and this talk is a little bit more startup heavy, as that's where I've had the most recent experience. These recruiters very much respond to financial incentive. And somebody whose primary goal is money is not someone who is looking out for your best interest. Meaning, a recruiter would not be your mentor. So I've seen a lot of young women who come into the Valley, and they say like, oh, these recruiters want to be my friends. And they want to be your friends because they want to place you because they want to get 20% of salary. So just always keep that in the back of your mind. Now, recruiters are just like everybody else in the respect that they do pattern matching. So every time they meet a candidate, they immediately think, how can I place this candidate? And a lot of that comes back to, how have I placed candidates that are similar to this person in the past? So when I meet somebody who does marketing, the first thing I think of is, okay, you're probably like Joe, who also does marketing, and then I frame the way I talk and I think about you based on past experience. So I see a lot of these young women coming out of undergrad and coming out of boot camp programs, and they'll sync up with a recruiter. And a lot of these women are very excited about computer science, like they should be, like all of us are, and that's why we're here today. And they'll say, you know, I really love coding, but I'm not exactly completely confident in my coding skills. So there are other things I really enjoy. And what immediately happens is the recruiter says, oh, you'd be great at product. You would be great at support. And so suddenly, the recruiter, who has the keys to the castle, so to speak, is funneling the candidate into other job applications, because usually the people that the recruiter is placing in engineering roles are men, not women. So, ooh, we got so excited. So stay true to what you want when you talk to these recruiters. Remember your goals. Yes, they don't want to do you a disservice, but you need to think true about what you want and be careful about who's guiding you along those paths. So everybody, I feel like, in the Valley is like, if I'm in an elevator, we all prepare for this situation, but like, let's really be honest, does it ever happen? If I'm in an elevator with Marissa Mayer, like, when would she be in the elevator with me? But we all like prepare, like, if I'm in this elevator with Marissa Mayer, what's my 1-minute pitch? What am I gonna tell Marissa so that she'll know how unbelievably awesome I am? So we like prepare these like pitches about ourselves. And I think that this is a really big problem. So several years ago, I had quit the first startup I was working at, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. So I'd done engineering, I'd done research, I'd done product, and I met with one of my mentors, and I sat down and I'm like, you know, I don't know if I should do like strict engineering, if I should go back into doing product. And he's like, Julia, like, don't put yourself in a box. Your whole career, you're going to face people who are going to be pigeonholing you and are going to be putting yourself in a box. Don't help them do that. If you go into a job interview and someone's like, okay, are you back-end, front-end, database, data science? Don't answer that question. Say, you know what? Yeah, yes, and maybe no, but I would offer yourself as, look, I'm good at a lot of things, here's what I do, and let's find a role that's good for me. If you're talking to someone at a company who wants to pigeonhole you, then that's probably not the best fit, especially if you have a large amount of interests. And I'm not trying to say that if you're a specialist, that's a problem, but just ensure that you don't become a specialist prematurely to meet somebody else's needs. So I think that, so when I first graduated from college, I would watch, this was many, many years ago. There was this reality show on, and it was called Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica. So, and between you and us, and I did watch this program, and the basis of this reality show was Jessica Simpson, who is a singer and apparently now runs a fashion and fragrance empire. She had married this man, Nick Lachey, and he was in some sort of a boy band. I cannot recall the name of the boy band. I was going to Google it. Does anyone know? 98 Degrees. I love it. So they had gotten married, and they had this reality show. And their marriage wasn't perfect, but I watched this reality show because it was very entertaining. And at that time, I was in a relationship with my boyfriend at the time. And the relationship was like, honestly, kind of a mess. Like, we just weren't a really good fit for each other. And I would watch this show, and I would be like, wow, like, they have a great marriage. Like, they just seem amazing. Like, yeah, they get into fights, but they just seem great. And like, I'd look in my internal life, and I'd be like, oh, my relationship is a mess. Like, I don't know if we want to be together, blah, 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 blah. And then 6 months later, I'm like at the grocery store, and I look over at the tabloids, and they were getting a divorce. And this was like shocking to me, because I was like, oh my God, like, but it was perfect. And the lesson that I learned is, don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. So I was thinking about my internal feelings, and I was trying to compare those to the outside image that Nick and Jessica had projected about their marriage. So where I think we are particularly guilty about this is we've all read Lean In, right? So we all have very intimate knowledge of Sheryl Sandberg's outside, and we compare our insides to her outsides. So remember, you don't have to be a superwoman. You don't have to look around and say, wow, you know, I went to Julia's Facebook page and all she does is amazing things. Trust me. Like, I just don't post about the things that are not amazing. So be careful the comparisons that you make. And ideally, don't compare yourself to others, but let's be honest. Like, I've never been able to not do that. If you know how, please come and give a talk about how to do that. So I feel like as women, we're very much brought up, and at least I was, to be very nice, and to be very friendly, and to be very warm. And I'm an extrovert. I love people. Like, I like to consider myself a friendly person. But on the day that I quit IBM research, and I was leaving to go to a startup, and I was in my, like, managers, because IBM's a huge company, right? And there's like 100 levels of manager. So I'm like, managers office. And I was like, I'm gonna leave and go to the startup, and the woman in charge was like, you know, I'm so happy for you, this is gonna be great, but we're really sad to lose you because you're so nice. And I was like, give me a break. Like, I don't wanna be known as nice. I wanna be respected as a technologist. I want to be thought of as a leader. I want to be thought of as somebody who helps women and helps other minorities in STEM. I want to write amazing code, but I don't want to be known as nice. And I tried to think about why this happened. Like, how did I get myself in this, like, nice dilemma? And I think a lot of it was because I spent a lot of my early career apologizing. And I know that this is a lesson you've probably heard before, and they always tell us when we give talks to not tell people things they already know, but I think this is worth saying again because I see it happen all the time, every day. So I'll be in a conversation with a couple other technologists, a couple men and a couple women, and inevitably someone will say something that sounds really important, but nobody has any idea what on earth they're talking about. And the woman will say, I'm really sorry, but I don't understand. Could you please repeat it? And I'm there like, what are you talking about? So don't apologize because other people can't communicate with you well. Don't apologize when it's not your fault. Don't apologize because you don't know somebody's bizarre acronyms that they're talking about. I would encourage you, now this doesn't mean like, don't be mean to people. Like, with my team, when I break the build, I apologize. When I delete people's code accidentally, all this happened, I apologize. Like, but on my I've hired some really brilliant engineers. And sometimes we're on different levels when we communicate. And so one of them will say something, like, I think we should approach this problem this way. And I'll say, what do you mean? Can you give me an example? But I'm not apologizing. And second, I feel like this goes hand in hand. I see a lot of women, they'll say things like, I would love to come to your event, but I'm gonna need to be 30 minutes late because I have this other event, which is really important, and then I have to do this, and so I'm really sorry, but I have this, and they kind of give me this like life story, and I just wanna be like, don't apologize, and you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to prove yourself to other people. And so my husband is actually like really fantastic about this, where someone will invite us over, and he'll be like, we have another engagement, we'll be there late. And it's taken me 100 years. I'm not even that old. It's taken me many years. So it's felt like 100 years. Trust me, like, I'm looking good if I'm 100. It's taken me forever to learn this lesson that you can be polite, but you don't have to always provide the excuses. You don't have to always tell somebody, this is why. So think about these things. The next time someone approaches you about something and you feel inclined to give an excuse, think about, do I really need to give the excuse? So maybe if it's a manager, like perhaps, but if it's a stranger, Okay, so years ago, when I was at IBM, I worked with a really, really amazing woman. We'll call her Sally. So Sally worked on a small team. She was the only female on the team, probably about 5 or 6 engineers, and she's an engineer. And Sally was really, really good at communication. She was really good at making PowerPoint slides. She's really good at giving presentations. She was really good at like finagling conference rooms. And when you work at a large company, it's like 99% of the people are spending half their time like trying to get a conference room. It's this bizarre, like, unsolved problem. So she was really good at these things, really polished, really put together. And I started to notice that over the years, anytime there was a presentation that needed to be prepared, people would be like, Sally, hey, please, can you do this? And she kind of liked these things, and so she started doing them. And so she got really good at assembling PowerPoint presentations. She got really good at finding conference rooms. But at the end of the day, what she really loved was algorithms. She really loved science. She really liked distributed systems. Those were her passions. But as the years went by, she was doing less and less programming, and she was doing more and more of these other things. And it wasn't that the team didn't value her contributions. It was just like, oh, can you do it? You've always done it. And then after a while, she starts getting a little bit, this is a true story, she started getting frustrated, and she's like, I think I want to go work at a startup. And I'm like, okay, let's chat. So we get coffee, because by this time I had left IBM, and I'm like, let's chat about this. And I'm like, tell me about what you're passionate about. Tell me about what you're doing right now. And she's like, well, last week, I spent most of the week writing a PowerPoint presentation. And then I had to go to a meeting to give the PowerPoint presentation. So I did a lot of prep for the meeting. And I'm like, wait, you're an engineer. Like, tell me what you're doing on the engineering front. And she's like, well, the rest of the team, they do a lot of the engineering now. And to be really honest, like, I do a lot less engineering now, and I've become a lot less confident, and that's the problem. So she was doing all of this extra credit, and in spending less time doing engineering, she was becoming less confident in our skills. And let's face it, like, confidence is a very, very, very important part of being able to communicate and take on new projects and staying in engineering. So I told her there is no substitute for great technical skills. So communication is important. These other skills are important. I'm not going to tell you they're not. But think about it. Let's go back to college, back to maybe undergrad, back to high school. You didn't get an A on the test by failing the test and acing the extra credit. You got the A+ by acing the test and by doing the extra credit. So be very careful about the extra credit that you're doing, and ensure that if that extra credit is something you're truly passionate about, make sure that either you're doing that for your own self-fulfillment, because perhaps you care about the organization, perhaps you want to become a better speaker, and it's not because it's going to further your career in engineering. So I do a lot of yoga. I do a lot of running, and for a while I thought, I should become a yoga instructor. It'll be like, I'll have my cake and eat it too. So the first thing that you learn when you think about becoming a yoga instructor is that if you love yoga, you should not become a yoga instructor, because you will not be doing yoga. You will be instructing others in how to do yoga. So I meet a lot of young women and even women mid-career, and I say to them, so tell me about, like, where do you want to, what are you passionate about? Tell me about your path, where you want to go. And it's always a tough question, because sometimes it changes. I don't know where I'm going to go. We'll see. And they all give me the exact same answer. The answer starts like this. I'm going to get my first job, and I'll be a junior engineer. And I'll put in the long hours, probably longer hours than my colleagues. That's kind of the subtext. I'll put in all these longer hours, and I'll really prove myself. And then I'm going to become an intermediate engineer. and I'm gonna work really hard, and then I'm going to become a senior engineer, and then I'm going to become a manager. And like this career path, like I hear it every single time. And what I would very caution you is there are a lot of successful paths in technology, and do not leave technology because you think that the only way to become successful is to become a manager. So now I do a lot more managerial tasks, and let me tell you, those tasks do not involve me writing code. They involve me ensuring the team is functioning at a high level, that people are happy, that nobody's kind of in a rabbit hole, that nobody feels frustrated or insecure in their abilities. I do a lot of career development. And so think about what you want. And it changes throughout your life. And I never thought 5 years ago I would be doing what I'm doing now. And 5 years from now, I'm probably going to be doing something totally crazy and different that I can't even think about now. But I want to tell you this story. So I'm friends with several like senior technologist women in the Valley. And one of them is probably one of the best iOS engineers I've ever met. She's fantastic. She's probably written the iOS apps for every startup in the Valley. She does a lot of contract work. And so we're sitting there the other day, and she's like, I think it's time for me to become a manager. And I was like, let's talk more about that. So tell me why you feel like you want to become a manager. And she's like, well, like I own iOS. Like I know how to do this backwards and forwards. Companies come to me, they want me to build and scale their iOS apps. And so I think that I could go work at, for example, like a Facebook, and I could run their iOS team. And when they're doing iOS wrong, I would tell them how to do it right. And I was like, that's not what a manager does. So ideally, you're hiring people who are so smart that you don't have to tell them, quote unquote, you're doing things wrong. Because these people are brilliant. What you're doing is you're saying, is this fitting into the bigger vision of where the company wants to go? And so I only tell you this is because if you are just like my close friend and you're a great iOS engineer, you could continue doing amazing iOS work. You could become a fellow at a company. You could be a great technical leader, but you don't have to become a manager. And I often see a lot of women where perhaps they have great communication skills and everyone's like, you should become the manager. Just think deeply about if that's something you want to do. So every place I have ever worked, there has always been somebody who thought, why did we hire this woman? And it's a frustrating thing, and I'm not telling you that to demoralize you, but I'm telling you to prepare that if you're ever in a job and somebody says to you, like, are you good enough? We've all had that experience. Haters are always going to be there, and they're always going to hate, but keep in mind, most people in the world are largely self-interested. And it's easy for them to critique, especially if they're in a position of power, but you just gotta brush that off. And I know it's easier said than done, but we've all faced it. Ignore those haters and focus on the people who are the cheerleaders, for the people who believe in you. Now, as I wrap this up, there's one, I had many grand ideas of things that I wanted to share with you today, but I feel like there's one thing that I feel like has been the most important thing thus far in my career. And it's not something crazy that you're gonna read about in TechCrunch or in All Things D. But I think that this skill is the best skill that I have developed. It hasn't been an easy journey, and it's something that I think serves me well every single day. And that is a strong sense of self-awareness. So I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm bad at, and I own that. And I don't sit around apologizing for the things that I don't know about. Sometimes I think, yeah, I need to work on these things, but we all have things that we're not good at. And I often will focus on the things that I'm great at, and I'll find people where our Venn diagram overlaps just enough that we have the same core values, but they'll have that skill set that I don't have, whether that's marketing, whether that's deep DevOps experience. And I'll lean on that person and I'll say, you're amazing and you're an expert in this area that honestly, like, either it befuddles me every day, that I'm not interested in, these things, and I'll find these people in my network and I'll bring them in to help me and support me when necessary, and I'll do the same for them. So don't think that you have to be great at everything. None of us are great at everything. And so just think about what you're good at and really focus on those types of things. So what would this talk be without another rap reference? To be wise is to know what you don't know. And this really has served me in every single context that I've been in, from starting companies to running teams to being an engineer. Like, I know what I don't know, and it changes, and it's different every year. So, are any of you familiar with the rap artist will.i.am? Okay, so he was, I believe, in the Black Eyed Peas with Fergie, and then some things happened that confused me that I don't understand. And now he recently came out with an album. I purchased it, guilty as charged. And he has this song on the album called Geekin'. And it's not exactly the kind of song that I could play for you right now. But the thesis of this song is that engineers are the new leaders of the world. Like, we are the rebirth of cool. So I had to do a little bit of like, I had to, massage the data a little bit here. But like, I encourage you to listen to this song, and I love it, and I listen to it before I go running, and I wish that I could play it for the youth, but that's just not gonna happen. But he's basically saying, like, you have the skills to build things that are amazing, and you should own that, and this is the time. Math, science, it is awesome. And so embrace that. Maybe you're not a technologist in there writing code, but you're in technology, and this is the time. So own it, live it, and finally, don't just take everything I say. My last piece, advice, talk is cheap. I can get up here and I can tell you all these things, but it's your own path that you're carving. Think about the things that people tell you. Don't just accept it. Sleep on the advice. Seek out competing advice. Because, hey, maybe I change my mind about things all the time as new data comes up. And so I encourage you to actively seek out people who disagree with you, because often you can learn something amazing. You might change your mind, you might not, but don't just take everything I've said to you verbatim. And that is all. You can find me on Twitter. I will be here this morning, but I do need to leave after the break. So thank you all so much.